As a UK human rights lawyer, I have to record my absolute shame and horror that we, the UK, have gone even better than the US have done. We all know the pictures from Abu Ghraib, the prisoners on leashes, being attacked by dogs, sexual humiliation. Well, we've done even better than that. 3 of my clients have been tortured to death whilst in detention with UK troops. One man, a man called Baha Musa, was tortured systematically over 2 or 3 days and then died in agony with a hood over his head. His father, Colonel Musa, and a witness, Kiefer Taha al-Mutari, were brave enough to be in London when I acted for them last July in a High Court case, which we won in terms of establishing that the European Convention on Human Rights applies. Out of respect to those 2 men who can't be here, I would like to read an extract from the witness statement of the survivor of the torture, Kiefer. I should add that Kiefer was beaten so badly over such a long period of time that he had acute kidney failure. One of his blood enzymes, which should have been less than 40, raised to over 100,000. Miraculously, he survived. This is his statement. Baha appeared to have much worse ill treatment than the others. 2 or more soldiers would beat him at a time, whereas the rest of us were beaten by 1 soldier. Baha may have been punished more than the others in an act of revenge. Baha's father, who witnessed the arrest, had informed the officer in charge that he'd seen the soldiers stealing money from the hotel. Baha received much more beating than myself and the other detainees. He was not able to stand up, and the soldiers continued beating him even while he was on the floor. The soldiers used particularly sharp jabbing movements into the area beneath the ribs, which was particularly painful. Soldiers took turns in abusing us. At night, the number of soldiers increased, sometimes to 8 at a time. We were prevented from sleeping throughout as soldiers introduced the names game. Soldiers would mention some English names of football stars or players and make us remember them, or we would be beaten severely. One terrible game the soldiers played involved kickboxing. The soldiers would surround us and compete as to who could kickbox one of us the furthest. The idea was to try and make us crash into the wall. During the detention, Baha was taken into another room and he received more beatings in that room. On the 3rd night, Baha was in a separate room and I could hear him moaning through the walls. He was saying that he was bleeding from his nose and that he was dying. I heard him say, "I am dying, blood, blood." I heard nothing further from him after that. I want to say a brief few words to finish about Fallujah, because I'm conscious that we are going to hear from witnesses in 2 days' time. It seems to me, from the stories that I've read, and of course there are not many of them, that what we have here is an act of collective punishment towards the community in Fallujah. One witness, a doctor, speaks of the testimony of a 16-year-old girl. He says, she stayed for 3 days with the bodies of her family who were killed in her home. When the soldiers entered, she was in her home with her father, mother, 12-year-old brother and 2 sisters. She watched the soldiers enter and shoot her mother and father directly without saying anything. They beat her 2 sisters, then shot them in the head. After this, her brother was enraged and ran at the soldiers while shouting at them. So they shot him dead. There are some important issues for the panel and also for the International Criminal Court prosecutor to examine about the legality of that sort of behaviour. I want to conclude by noting that what took place in Iraq challenges us all as human beings, and we must be resolute in our determination to make international law stronger and more concerned with peace. There has to be accountability for the dreadful numbers of Iraqi civilian casualties in what was an aggressive war, bearing in mind the use of indiscriminate methods of attack and indiscriminate weapon systems. There cannot be impunity for acts of torture, even torture to death, particularly where those people lost their lives in detention. There cannot be impunity for the wanton killing of civilians during the occupation.